Hi, I'm Jeff Arnell, the Executive Director of Black Mountain College Museum and Art Center here in Asheville, North Carolina. Welcome to today's program. We just heard 5 wonderful new commissions by members of Nevermind The Noise, a collective of graduate student composers from New York University. The pieces were performed by Asheville-based duo Two Way Street with cellist Ashlee Booth and percussionist Adam Langa. I'm so happy to have the opportunity to discuss the work with Ashlee and Adam from Two Way Street and composers Yiqi Kang, Adam Lutz, Kirsten L Ewart, Blake Opper, and Dan Langa from Nevermind The Noise. Thank you all for joining us today. I was thinking that we could start with a quick round of introductions from each composer. It would be great to hear a bit about your background, maybe your primary instrument, the origins of the composition, and then also collaborating with Two Way Street. Ashlee and Adam, feel free to jump in at any time, and then we could expand the conversation to get into more of the nitty-gritty with some of pieces about each piece. Who would like to start?
Yes, I can go first.
Thanks, Dan.
Sure. Yeah, so thanks for having us. It's really great to be here. And yeah, my name's Dan Langa. I am a composer and producer. I'm originally from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and spent some time for undergrad in Massachusetts, and now based in Brooklyn. My primary instrument for a while was trumpet. I played jazz trumpet basically from middle school through the end of undergrad, and it's now sort of more become keyboard and piano. And yeah, so I guess my piece is called Gossamer, and like a lot of my pieces, I like to write music that's sort of based on an image or sort of just like a snapshot in time more so than a linear narrative. So it was really inspired mostly just by spending time with Ashlee and Adam over Zoom. We got a chance to have a few meetings with them and just get to hear them play around on their instruments and experiment, and sort of just latching on to a couple of things that they'd done. I think in my writing, I'm trying a lot more to sort of squeeze more out of a little amount of material rather than trying to overload a piece with a lot of material. So I think I picked sort of 2 or 3 techniques for each person and ran with those. And the title came after I found the sound world. And Gossamer is basically, it means like kind of cobwebs or light sort of kind of floating material, I guess. So I was just trying to evoke that.
Wonderful, great. Who would like to go next?
I'll jump in. My name is Adam Lutz. I'm originally from Michigan also, but the other side of the state. I'm from Kalamazoo. I like a lot of musicians. I played piano for a long time, and then as I started like kind of getting into the middle school and high school bands, I was more of a percussion heavy person. And then when I went to my undergrad at Belmont University down in Nashville, I was playing a lot of percussion. And then picked up the organ as well, and was playing that in a lot of churches there. And I'm now living in Manhattan and doing my studies at NYU. So my piece is called "All the Mirrors in the World." It's sort of loosely based on a poem by Frank O'Hara that is untitled, really. I mean, the title is just poem, and then in his series of poems called Poem, the title is the first line, and it's a really kind of simple, really interesting poem that's just sort of about reflection and contemplation, and that's sort of what I wanted to kind of give to Two Way Street when I was creating this piece, was to make a space for reflection, both for them and for a listener, and they were really really wonderful about helping me find different ways to do that, and it was a really kind of interesting process of them being able to experience that kind of space, both within themselves and with each other, because I like the way it's written. There's like a section where both of them are kind of doing their own thing but are responding to each other. And then there's a section where they're together doing the same kind of thing, and then it kind of ends with them away from each other again. So yeah, it was a really similar process to Dan's process of just kind of taking the sounds that they were giving us and really being into, you know, one or two things that we then sort of constructed a piece out of.
Thank you. Thank you. Who's next?
I can go. Hi, I'm Blake Opper. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. My background is as a jazz saxophone player primarily, and I'm now based out of Brooklyn. And yeah, my piece lately I've been, it's titled Adris of Babylon. And lately I've been into like writing text files for myself to kind of give an idea of a sound world of the piece, and talking to Ashlee and Adam about what they were interested in, specifically like the kind of improvisation that they were interested in, working with the sounds that I got from them and kind of developing this text piece. I got this text that was sort of about dedicated religion, but sort of an old religion, almost like a Game of Thronesy kind of thing. And so I kind of based the graphic score of the piece around a sort of narrative that I had of a specific character. So it's sort of like a narrative story. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And I suppose that leaves me. Yeah, so my name is Kirsten Ewart. I'm a Canadian composer, raised in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, which is in the middle of nowhere prairies. And I did my early musical experience. I learned flute first, and then I picked up all the woodwind instruments eventually. And then in undergrad, I focused on the oboe, and then eventually transitioned into becoming a composer. So the piece that I wrote for Two-Way Street is called Thoughts Race. This piece is sort of an interesting piece. So oftentimes, you know, I'll listen to the repertoire of the ensemble that I'm going to be working with, and sometimes I just get the urge to write something that's the opposite of something else that I heard them play, the like complete opposite. So so I wanted to give them something sort of short, and focused on these sort of short, hard to manage sounds and these sort of complex rhythms that overlapped with each other, where they would sometimes connect in moments and be disjunct in moments. And it was partly a challenge for them and partly a challenge for me, because I myself had been writing sort of longer lines in my other music at the time, and just wanted to go in a completely different direction and challenge myself in a new way, and challenge Ashlee and Adam to try and connect in a different way with each other, in a piece that seemingly doesn't connect as often as one would think it would.
Thank you, Kirsten. Do you want to, why don't we start right with you, since I would love to know a bit more about, you know, some of the rhythmic kind of devices in the piece, and also the choice of the chopsticks, that kind of sonic or knitting needles, as you said in the score.
Yeah, it's something that I've used maybe once before, and I really liked the sound. I used it in sort of a smaller way, and I kind of wanted to return to that sound. And I thought it would work really, really well with the sound of pizzicato on the cello. You know, we so often fall into the world of bowings with string instruments, and sometimes giving like a really nice pizzicato piece can be a lot of fun. Yeah, the chopsticks or the knitting needles, it's just like such a sharp, precise sound. And it would seem to be easier to control, but it's actually harder, I think, to control. I don't know if Adam has anything to say about that, but you know, it's not necessarily traditional with the vibraphone at all, and it just gets a cleaner, more precise sound, just like a pizzicato on the cello would get. And I thought that just like that combination of those two short sounds would just create this interesting sound world, you know. And the title of the piece, Thoughts Race, you know, it's kind of giving that concept of like you have this thought and then you get another thought right away and another thought right away, and it's hard to like pinpoint those thoughts and to tag them down when, especially when you're creating something, or when you're trying to write something down. You know, capturing that in a piece of music with these sort of short sounds that you can't quite grasp is sort of a neat idea.
Adam, what do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was a really great piece to learn, and I totally see what she was saying. A lot of the music I have been playing recently kind of uses the vibraphone for long tones. You saw in a couple of the other pieces, I removed the dampening pedal so the bars ring completely freely, and I played a couple of pieces in my life where I'm continuously bowing the vibraphone for long, kind of drony sounds, and working with kind of harmonics that are floating in the air from the instruments. And I was excited when I saw Kirsten's piece, how different it was in terms of the dampening, the complete and total dampening of all the notes, which is something I hadn't worked with for quite a bit, for quite a while. And it was a great challenge, and it was a lot of fun to learn. And the chopsticks definitely added a new dimension in terms of like the actual technical approach, because they're shorter, and it's a little bit more difficult to be accurate with them because they're so thin, and they're light. It's a completely different material to work with, and it was a really great opportunity for Ashlee and I to kind of challenge where we were as an ensemble and kind of bring us back a little bit to more of our beginnings when we were playing more, more rhythmic, kind of shorter sound pieces.
Yeah, and I don't have the score pulled up right now, but I guess this is also brought across the board. Is this specifically for vibraphone? So it can't be. I saw on one of the scores that it was for marimba or any. Does your score, Kirsten, identify vibraphone as the piece?
Yeah, I think vibraphone would be the best option for this piece. I think the way that sort of the plastic chopsticks play against the metal is sort of an important part in the actual sound world of this piece. And you know, marimba has wood sound bars, so I don't think it would come across as nicely. I also think, you know, there's always a concern with damaging the instrument when you use a new material on an instrument that exists. And that was definitely a concern that, you know, Adam and I talked about, because, you know, I'd mentioned maybe metal, and obviously metal on metal is not a good idea. So thus the plastic chopsticks, that's what, you know, Adam and Ashlee had around to utilize. But I suggested knitting needles as well. And, you know, a lot of percussionists actually do carry knitting needles in their stick bag, or some sort of just like empty stick of plastic. So basically anything that they would want to use that would associate with that sound.
Yeah, I mean, damaging the instrument, and Adam knows this, but I'm a percussionist as well, and and kind of a little bit of a hibernating percussionist, but nonetheless, I do remember playing a piece that I think we settled on. It was coat hangers cut metal. The coat hangers on a glockenspiel, 2 glockenspiels, but it actually did over time, over lots of practice, ended up damaging the instrument.
Yeah, it can happen. You know, as percussionists, we get asked to do all kinds of interesting things. And a lot of percussionists are really excited to use new materials. And sometimes you never know what's going to happen when you introduce something new. And I have a drum that is kind of an older drum that I've had for a really long time. And that's kind of, if I want to try something new or try something really wild or a new thing, I'm going to use this old kind of crappy drum that I don't really care that much about. So percussionists are definitely, can break things sometimes.
Well, thank you. Dan, can we go back to your piece?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and I love this idea, and I'm really interested when I saw the note about the origin of the name or the program note, and
Mhm.
I thought that it would just be that's what you kind of came up with first. So I was really surprised just now when you said, "Oh, that was kind of an afterthought."
Yeah.
Once you decided on, you know, some of the other stuff and conversations, does that often happen with you, as far as, or do you? Naming a piece or the kind of overarching framework or idea?
Yeah, I think I more often than not, it definitely isn't consistent, but I think more often than not, the titles usually come after the piece. I think usually it starts with sound rather than a concept for in most cases. And then it usually takes a day or like an afternoon of like thumbing through a thesaurus or something like that, of just like finding a word that really I think is interesting or um, sort of captures the what I'm trying to go for. But yeah, I would say I think more often than not, it's definitely sound that comes first before the concept.
Yeah. And Adam, what can you tell us about performing or interpreting this piece?
Yeah, it's a great piece. I think one of the biggest things for me on the percussion side of things in Dan's piece is the extended techniques with the bells, which we sort of developed remotely. And that has been a fun challenge. And Dan had this great idea, as you see in the piece, where I sort of strike the bell on the undampened vibraphone bar. And as I strike it, it sounds the vibraphone bar, but it also sounds the bell. So both kind of ring at the same time. So Dan had this great idea, and I thought it sounded great. And so I workshopped it, and it ended up sounding pretty nice. And beyond that, it was a great piece to learn. And I think that on Ashlee's end, Ashlee, I believe, had to leave early. On Ashlee's end, she had to work a lot on those harmonics in the piece. There's a lot of space. It was very delicate to put together. And it was a lot of fun to put together.
Yeah, Dan, what have you been listening to lately? I mean, or where did this kind of these sound worlds, was it informed by something that you've heard, or is it just really discovery and kind of thinking about Two-Way Street?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's a lot of it is I like to, or recently I feel like I've liked to try and build in inconsistencies that are sort of like you're meant to lean into them rather than correct them. I guess that's sort of like part of the sound rather than it being something to shy away from. So things like when Ashlee's bowing both the side of the cello and the string to get the harmonic sound, that's hard to keep consistent, but that's sort of it's kind of how it's meant to be, I guess. And sort of it's meant to only sometimes really speak clearly. And in terms of what I'm listening to recently, there's a label called Whatever's Clever that's based in Brooklyn here, that I really like, that I've listened to a lot of things. They're putting out, there's a band called Son Lux that I'm a really big fan of. I know Adam Lutz is also a big fan of that. I don't know about other people, but we often have we have very long conversations about their sound design. And I think that band, I feel like do that sort of practice with inconsistencies as well. It's sort of like a sound sort of very subtly morphs over time. And it's sort of, unless it can kind of go by you without it even realizing that anything's changed, but sort of just very long, slow transformations, I guess. So, yeah.
I love that. And I really love that group too. And this idea of inconsistencies is really wonderful. Yeah. Adam Lutz, maybe we could hop over to your piece and talk about all the mirrors in the world.
Yeah, definitely.
Frank O'Hara. So it was so wonderful to see his work in your score, and even as a launching pad, tell us a little bit more about having a piece that is connected to a new work. And even as, so it's actually inside the score, and I was wondering if we could even post it, along with the pieces, or if that would be helpful in a way or not.
Yeah, personally, I think it would be really helpful to just see it if people want to. I definitely am a proponent of like just experiencing music without really knowing anything about it, and then if you want to dig in, you absolutely can. But for me, I think a lot of my music, in varying degrees, is influenced by a lot of other work that's extra musical. This isn't the first time I've used Frank O'Hara as source material. I've used his work in song cycles before, where I'm really kind of in the words and trying to understand the phrase structure and all these kinds of things. But for this piece in particular, it was really more of a like conceptual starting point. Like it was like that was the like where my mind was when I was starting to create these notes and center my sort of conceptual understanding of the idea that I had. And the reason I included it in the score was because a lot of the music that I've written is aleatoric. There's a lot of there's a lot of opportunity for Adam and Ashlee to sort of create their own piece within the framework that I've given them. So and that's a sort of territory that I haven't explored a whole lot of kind of giving a lot of freedom to the performers. So it was important to me to kind of make sure that the three of us were on the same conceptual page, like that we were all starting in the same spot. So yeah, I gave them the poem, and I encouraged them to sort of read it and think about it, and just kind of have that influence their playing as they were rehearsing it and then eventually recording it.
Yeah, Adam, do you have anything to add to the piece?
Yeah, definitely. It's a great piece, and I think that I get really excited when sometimes I listen to music and I'm not sure where the sounds are coming from, but you can see there's activity and people are playing, but you're not sure where the source is from each sound you're hearing. And it's even more exciting for me when I'm playing a piece and the harmonics blend so well and the acoustics just create this space where I couldn't even tell at points in the bowing sections when I'm bowing the vibraphone with Ashlee, which sound was the one I was creating and in which sounds was the one that Ashlee was creating. And that is always a very trippy, fun experience for me as a performer and as a listener. And I really enjoyed that experience while playing Adam's piece. And then the bell technique in the beginning was also a really fun kind of experiment that I had shown all these composers, sort of just like a improvisatory technique I use on the bells sometimes when I'm playing, where I kind of turn the bells into I dampen them and I turn them into a shaker if I want a drier sound. And Adam kind of took that and decided to write for it. And you see that in the beginning of the piece, where I'm sort of using some of the bells to ring fully and using some of the bells to kind of create a drier shaker sound. And I think it all really comes together very well in the end.
Yeah. It's so amazing that during the shutdown that you were able to do this, and connect remotely and kind of explore other possibilities with instruments and, and have the opportunity to kind of like go into the different possibilities as a group, but then also even as a percussionist with Adam, looking at like these extended techniques. Is there anything that you would, like to say about that, Adam, because I think we kind of adapted, right? We really, as everyone says, pivoted to this new world.
Yeah. Well, in this new world, it has been a big shift. And I think that coming up to this collaboration, Ashlee and I had been doing a lot of playing together in our house. And we had done a couple of like live broadcast performances. but we hadn't been doing that much collaboration remotely with people in other places away from us. And so when this opportunity came, we were really excited because it was a really good opportunity to work with other people in a different city. And that's something we really, really missed deeply throughout this pandemic, is going out and playing for people and going out to new cities and seeing new scenes and meeting people. And so when this collaborative project came to our inbox, we were very, very excited to just meet new people and connect intellectually with them about music and try and create something new. There are definitely some difficulties in that process because you're completely and totally collaborating remotely, and so the sounds are all through the internet and through sound files, processed through emails and stuff. So it's hard because you're never sharing a room together actually, but you come pretty close to really fully understanding the sounds and what you're trying to make together. And so that from our end, that's what this was like, and it's been great.
Yeah, I mean, something that you just brought up, this kind of combining of instruments. I mean, those types of things are really difficult. I mean, it happens on recordings. We hear great recordings with it happening, but it definitely, with the kind of the other part of the collaboration is the space. And that's difficult to kind of approximate, or even explore. And so, but I witnessed the pieces live in person, and I enjoyed them all so much. So, so it worked. If we could go, Blake, I would love to kind of, I guess it sounds like we're going to finish up with your piece.
Cool.
I would love to. I know Ashlee had to move on, but the extended techniques for the cello in your piece were just really incredible.
Thanks. Yeah, that's definitely just comes out of the workshop that we had with them, and them really sharing their whole lexicon with us of their different playing techniques. And I think I wrote in my head most of the piece just in that workshop because I was really excited with all the stuff that they were showing us.
Great. And have you written for the cello in the past?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, I assumed that you had. And are some of these harmonics, have you used these in other pieces, or was this really kind of completely new?
I've used harmonics in pieces before, but some of it was definitely best guesses and getting recordings back from Two-Way Street and being like, oh, it worked, great.
Yeah. Yeah, Adam, do you have, can you speak on Ashlee's behalf on some of this?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that a lot of those extended techniques you saw on the cello are things, like Blake already said, that we do for fun, and we showed them in a workshop. I think that the sort of like the noisy cello sounds we're getting in the beginning of the piece is something that Ashlee and I have both kind of explored together. As a percussionist, I'm always like really interested in just like testing things out on other instruments in different ways. And I know that pressure bowing into the cello can create all these interesting noises and sounds and harmonics and stuff. And so Ashlee and I have done performances and made pieces where we're both bowing the cello together in different ways and both kind of messing with pressure on the strings. And Ashlee can execute it really, really well. And I think that's kind of where that kind of come from in terms of the extended techniques on the cello. So yeah.
Yeah, and also Blake, the use of kind of a different type of notation. I think this kind of is throughout all of the pieces, but within your piece, it's front and center. Do you have any? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I hadn't used graphic notation in a while, but my background being as a jazz musician and kind of being in grad school for composition, most of what I'm writing is very standard notation because, you know, it's school and I'm trying to get certain techniques down. So when we had the workshop and talking to these guys about kind of the improvisation that they're into, I got excited about writing something with improvisation in it because I hadn't really done that. And so I guess the graphic notation was kind of splitting the difference between having a piece that had a clear trajectory and had clear sections, but also giving them space to kind of interpret and have a musical interaction that's different every time the piece is performed.
Yeah. On top of that too, I would like to say that Ashlee and I have done a lot of we've done a lot of interpreting of graphic scores. It's a big part of my background as a percussionist. I played a lot of music by Mark Applebaum, who's a composer out of California, who has a lot of graphic scores. And my background I was working a lot with graphic scores. And so when Blake brought up, maybe I should do a graphic score, I was like, yes, let's do that. I haven't played one in a while, and I'd love to continue to explore that.
Yeah, I would love to open this back up to the group, and just as the idea of, notation, just because I do think it is that you kind of cannot oscillate back and forth, and depending on the situation where you're at and whatever the the group is that you're working with. But and also this kind of question or idea of interpretation and improvisation. And does anyone else want to chime in on that?
Sure. Yeah, I think, obviously my piece is almost the complete opposite of Blake's in this circumstance. It's very precisely rhythmically notated, and, there's notes in the score that are very like specific thoughts in very specific sections. And yet there's still like moments in my piece that I strive for things like that are in Dan's piece where what works together, what doesn't work together, and embracing what doesn't work or what does work is sometimes what creates beautiful moments that you don't expect. And I think graphic notation is a really good way to stumble upon those moments, and then even sometimes use them as inspiration in future pieces. If you accidentally stumble on something when you've got this graphically notated score, and then you go, wow, that's a really cool sound, and then you can embrace that sound and show it in your graphic score, or you can notate it in a future score. And I think that's really so special about composition. You can do anything from precise to open, and always be inspired for new things.
Thanks. Anyone else want to say anything about kind of that fine line of with fully notated graphic or even program notes, instructions? I think that there's quite a bit of instructions in each piece, which.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of program notes and instructions, I've kind of gone back and forth between how I approach those, because I think it's really useful to have some sort of into a piece. But I think Adam said this earlier about sort of just having a chance to experience the music in the moment and then sort of having that chance to sit there afterwards and, go over what you've just heard and sort of put your own take on it before. I think sometimes it's useful to have, very detailed program notes or performance notes, but I think definitely recently I've felt more, and my program note is just a sentence, or just basically a dictionary definition. And that sort of just felt like all it needed is just sort of, here's an image that you can take or leave and then listen. And then you can either, you can make your connections to that if you want to, or you can, say, I disagree and it kind of reminded me of this. And so yeah, I think that's, I don't know if that's a great answer to the question, but it's sort of just, I think at least for me, it's always kind of in flux about how I feel about giving an audience a a program note.
Yeah, the distinction between the program note, performance notes, and the different types of notation. I also, going back to Kirsten's piece, this idea of difficulty, of if something is fully notated and, there's that point, and I'm sure everyone here has thought about this or have looked at work like this or explored this territory, what is humanly possible to play? And that kind of approximation becomes a different type of performance or almost chance operation.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the percussion music of Xenakis, that most percussionists have been exposed to or been challenged to play, where almost the entire composition itself is the basis of, is this possible? And it's sort of like watching the percussionist perform the music is sort of like this really interesting, you watch this percussionist go through this turmoil and this battle trying to play this super complex music, and that is the composition itself, is really interesting and can be super effective for sure.
Yeah, and I love kind of also what I'm hearing too is that, one size doesn't fit all. And, that's kind of the idea of these kind of collaborations and opportunities. And that's one of the beautiful things about music and sound, and that there's no right way or wrong way. And it's all kind of experimenting and exploring. So any last thoughts as we wrap up? I really thank you so much, everyone, for being part of this and for your music. Anything, Adam, that you wanted to say as we wrap up?
I just want to say thank you so much for collaborating with us on this project. It's been so fun to work with these composers and to work with you to put it out there. And we're just so happy with it all and grateful to be working with everybody here.
Great.
Definitely echo that and say thanks for all your work. And it's been great to put this together. And I think from our end, we usually, we have a great new music community in New York that we get to work with a lot. But I think one of the small bright sides of this moment is it's given us a chance to kind of reach beyond New York, and it's been great to work with you all in Asheville. So thank you.
All right. Well, enjoy your day and enjoy the music, and I hope to meet you in person sometime in the future. Thanks again. Thanks for tuning in.